Road rage, the war of Johnny Van Rail. It wasn't just a job, it was a way of life. I'm Johnny Van Rail, as the guys at the truck stops called me, or just Johnny to those who knew me close. 62 years old, 40 of them spent behind the wheel. 40 years means millions of miles, countless sunrises over the desert, and western winds in the face. My cab is my home. My International 9900i Eagle is my faithful steel horse that's been through fire and flood with me. I've watched America change, seen small diners disappear, highways get wider, and people get meaner. But I'm still out here. Big Johnny, last of the Mohicans, hauling vital freight. This run was special. Very special. I was hauling the kind of thing you never ask about and try not to mention. It was Category A freight. Extremely expensive, incredibly fragile, and most importantly, potentially dangerous. I couldn't share the details, but I can tell you those few crates strapped down in my trailer were worth more than my house in Nevada and could cause real trouble if they fell into the wrong hands, or even just got damaged. That's why I had strict instructions. No unnecessary stops, no route deviations, and God forbid, no contact with outsiders. This was a route through the desert, narrow canyons, and the hills of the Midwest. Hundreds of miles where the only company is the scorching wind and the smell of diesel. I was heading east as the sun rose over Utah, painting the sandstone cliffs in shades of terracotta. I felt calm, same as always. One hand resting on the wheel, the other on the gear shift. The CB radio quietly crackling in scan mode, the powerful Cummins vibrating under my feet. Life is good when you're on the road. But that peace, as is often the case, got shattered. They appeared out of nowhere. First, I saw them in my side mirror. Three bright, loud cars, a modified Honda Civic, and what looked like an old, painted-up Ford Mustang from the 90s. There were 4 or 5 kids in each car, early 20s, looking for a thrill. They were tearing down the road like maniacs, speeding, playing cat and mouse through the trucks like the whole interstate belonged to them. I tried to ignore them. I'm a professional. My nerves are steel, just like my International. But they quickly figured out that a huge, slow semi was the perfect target for their stupid games. The first Honda shot out from behind me on an incline, passing at a crazy speed. The driver, a kid in a baseball cap, turned back and flashed me what looked like a rude gesture, and his passengers roared with laughter. I just shrugged it off. Kids, what are you gonna do? I thought. But it got worse. They started to play with me like a pack of hungry coyotes. Next time they passed, they would slam on the brakes, forcing me to jump on the air brakes of my 9900i. And that's 80,000 pounds of pure inertia. When you're hauling this kind of cargo, any sudden stop is a major risk. They did it over and over. On narrow hills where my rig slowed down, they'd pass, cut right in front of me, and drop to a crawl, almost stopping, before speeding up again. Every time they did it, I heard my trailer groan under the weight and the shift in speed, and the thought of my fragile, expensive freight hammered in my head. I saw their faces in the mirror. They were openly mocking me, making faces, and one was even holding up a phone, filming the whole thing, probably for some dumb TikTok stunt. Their eyes were glowing with a wild, pointless joy from bothering the old trucker. I started to shake, not from fear, no, but from pure rage. My decades of calm were cracking. I was about to mash the CB radio button and call the nearest trooper, but I couldn't. My cargo was secret, and the less attention it drew, the better. I decided to go old school, avoid the conflict. Up ahead was a big truck stop with a fuel island and showers. I slowed down, signaled, and pulled into the lot. The group of young drivers blew past me, honking and shouting something I couldn't make out. I parked my rig in the far corner, shut down the engine, and just sat. I drank cold coffee from my thermos and breathed in the smell of diesel, trying to restore my zen. Give them a head start. They'll run a few hundred miles and be gone. You won't see them again, I told myself. I sat there for almost 3 hours. The sun was starting to drop, and its rays were less brutal. I made sure their little cars weren't anywhere near the gas pumps or the diner, and decided the road was clear. Time to roll, Johnny, I said to myself, firing up the engine again. I pulled back onto the interstate, feeling a sense of relief. The road was nearly empty, and I enjoyed the quiet, broken only by the rumble of my engine. I was already starting to forget the whole stupid incident, but life on the road is never that simple. Just a few miles later, I spotted them. They were parked on the shoulder, their Civic and Mustang lined up. They had spread out some beer and snacks on the hood of one car, and the whole crew was laughing, enjoying a roadside picnic. They had clearly decided to stop, and then continue their road trip. As I approached, they didn't even look my way. Okay, Johnny, roll on by. They're drunk, they're dangerous, But they're not your problem, I mumbled. I didn't change lanes, I didn't slow down, I just held my course, cruising past them at max speed. The moment I was clear, I grabbed the CB radio. Heads up, truckers. This is Johnny Van Rail, channel 19, mile marker 47, eastbound. Got a couple of small cars on the shoulder. Drivers look drunk. They were acting crazy earlier, now they're drinking. Be careful. They're a road hazard, fellas. Repeat, mile 47. Stay alert. I put the mic down. My conscience was clear. I warned the community. The sun was completely gone, and a thick, black night settled over the road, only occasionally broken by the moon and my powerful headlights. I felt the tension ease. I was almost home. I was almost there, but suddenly, in my side mirror, I saw one of their cars, that same Honda, catching up to me at a reckless speed. It hugged my left side to pass. As it drew alongside my cab and started to pull ahead, I felt a dull, wet thud on the windshield. Whump! Something splattered across the glass, a green and red mess that instantly ruined my vision, mixing with the headlight glare. Was that a tomato? A big, firm one, thrown from the passing car's window. It was a senseless, malicious act of vandalism. The impact was so sudden and loud that I flinched, but before I could recover, there were two more hits. This time they were sharper, metallic. Clang, clang! I heard something hard and heavy hit the metal parts of my cab. The front bumper, the grille. They did it again. They were waiting for me, and as they passed, they threw something at me to provoke me again, to force me to stop and start a fight. They just wanted fun. I pulled over to the shoulder and hit the air brakes. My heart was pounding like a jackhammer. This wasn't just vandalism. It was a threat to my safety and my cargo. What if that tomato had been a rock and shattered the glass? What if they had damaged something critical in the engine? I shut down the engine. A black silence fell over the cab, even louder than the engine's roar. I reached for my flashlight. I stepped out of the cab. The cold night air hit my face. I shone the light on the windshield. Yep, two big, nasty tomato stains. They must have bought them special at a roadside stand. Then I shone the light on the metal parts, on the grille, near the headlight, and on the fender. Two fresh, ugly dents, the size of small stones. Rocks, I whispered. They threw rocks at me. Something inside me snapped. 40 years on the road, I had never let myself sink to their level. But this wasn't a game anymore. This was an attack. They weren't just annoying me. They were actively assaulting federal freight and a professional driver. They put their lives and mine at risk. Not to mention the cargo. That was the last straw. Old Johnny Van Rail wasn't taking it anymore. I wasn't gonna call the cops. That takes too long. I was gonna handle this my way, the old school way. I climbed back into the cab. In the locker behind the seat, I always kept my old work gloves, thick leather, double stitched. I grabbed one, the heavy, tough one I use for changing tires in winter. Then I reached under the seat where I keep my toolkit and small parts. I found what I needed. A dozen steel ball bearings, the size of a large pea, perfectly round, weighing like small lead pellets. I also grabbed a few heavy nuts, from old trailer hitch bolts. I started to carefully but quickly stuff all of it into the old glove. Balls, nuts, balls. They filled the end, turning the soft leather glove into a heavy, flexible sack loaded with a metal surprise. I tied the open end of the glove with a thick rubber band. This was a trucker's weapon, used since my youth. Not lethal, but very, very persuasive. I fired up the engine again, feeling the steering wheel tremble in my hands. My eyes narrowed. All right, boys. You wanted to play. Let's play, I muttered. I merged back onto the highway and quickly gained speed. My eyes scanned the distance for their lights, and I found them. They were driving slowly again, almost like they were waiting. They didn't disappoint. As soon as they saw my headlights, the two cars, the Honda in front and the Mustang right behind it, started to speed up again to pass me. They must have thought, oh, the old guy's mad. This is gonna be fun. The Honda started to pass again. It was moving fast, but I didn't let it pull away. I eased up on the throttle a little. They drew alongside. I saw the driver, the same kid in the cab, roll down his window. I didn't wait. I quickly rolled down my driver's side window. The wind rushed into the cab, taking away the last bits of my composure. I grabbed my glove sack, hearing the steel balls rattle inside. When the Honda was at the perfect spot, its door and windshield directly opposite my cab, I took a deep breath. I aimed. Not at the kid, no. I aimed straight at his windshield. I threw. It wasn't a toss. It was a launch, with my whole shoulder, the entire weight of my indignation. The heavy, steel-filled glove flew like a cannonball. Crunch, K-R-A-A-A-S-H. The sound was incredible. The glass didn't just crack. It spiderwebbed out from the center where the glove hit, absorbing most of the force and dissipating the kinetic energy, preventing the metal from punching through. But the effect was achieved. The Honda reacted instantly. The driver, obviously shocked and disoriented, slammed on the brakes, his brake lights flashing like two red stars in the dark. But he wasn't alone. The Mustang was right on his tail. The driver of the Mustang was too close, too fast, and likely too distracted by whatever they were planning to throw at me to react in time. I heard a horrible, tearing sound of ripping metal, shattering plastic and squealing tires. Boom crash! The Mustang slammed into the rear of the Honda. Debris flew into the air, illuminated by my headlights. I didn't stop. I quickly rolled up my window, gripped the wheel tight, and hit the gas. They got what they deserved. I was sure no one was seriously hurt. The speed wasn't lethal yet, but their cars would definitely need serious repair, and their stupidity needed a cure. I drove on for several more miles, feeling the adrenaline slowly fade. I felt the tremor in my hands. But there was no regret, none at all. 15 minutes later, when I was well out of sight of the accident scene, I heard the CB radio hiss. Channel 19 calling. This is Big Ray, eastbound. Can anyone confirm the situation at mile 52? I see two small cars wrecked, pile up. Looks like a serious smash-up. They're blocking the lane. Looks like a rock flew into one of them, and the rear ender ran right into it. Calling state troopers and EMS. That's just crazy. I smiled, quietly, just a corner of my mouth. I didn't answer. I drove another 100 miles, and only then made my first stop. I was Johnny Van Rail again, the old trucker from Nevada, hauling my secret, dangerous freight through the American night. I found the old glove in my jacket pocket. I shook out the steel balls and nuts and tossed them into a trash can. The glove was just an old leather glove again. I sighed. I was exhausted, but filled with a deep, primal satisfaction. The cargo was safe. I was safe. And America, despite all the fools trying to mess it up, still needs its goods delivered. And I was going to deliver them. I returned to my wheel and drove on, leaving the Eastern night behind, and this memory is just another mile on my long, long haul. I closed my eyes for a second, and then opened them again, looking at the empty, dark road. Have a good one, boys, I whispered into the silence of the cab, pressing the gas pedal. And never, you hear me, never mess with an old trucker on a lonely stretch of highway.